Ozzy Osbourne is gone, leaving behind more than just heavy metal anthems and wild headlines. In his final breath, he whispered chilling words that shook even his closest loved ones, words that hinted at ghosts from his past, and maybe something darker. The world knew Ozzy Osbourne as the Prince of Darkness, a rock god who defied death, danced with demons, and bared his soul through screams and guitar riffs. But in his final moments, there were no roaring crowds or thundering drums, just silence and a haunting whisper that no one was prepared for.
I'm a rock and roll dog, and I suppose I'll die that way. I mean, rock and roll made everything possible for me. I'm just like, it's given me so much joy. It's given me every emotion that you can ever imagine, every joy, every thrill, every up and every down, and every which way that you can think of, it's given me it.
After decades of controversy, addiction, and survival, Ozzy's last words weren't loud. They were fragile, cryptic, and deeply unsettling. What did he mean? Who was he speaking to? And why do those final words still leave an eerie chill long after he's gone? Ozzy Osbourne's death was the kind no one expected, even though his health had been declining for years. For a man who had survived overdoses, near-fatal accidents, and decades of substance abuse, it almost seemed like he was invincible. But his final days told a very different story, one of deep pain, silent suffering, and a haunting decline that fans didn't fully see coming. In the final week of his life, Ozzy had reportedly been in and out of consciousness, surrounded by family, but visibly tormented. Sources close to the Osbourne family say he had grown weaker each day, barely eating, barely speaking. His body, once fueled by chaos and rebellion, had finally begun to shut down.
Alcohol, is in my opinion, is the worst drug in the world because of the availability. You can buy alcohol anywhere.
Though doctors initially believed he could recover from his last hospitalization, everything changed in the early morning hours of his final day. Ozzy reportedly slipped into a coma just hours before his death. Family members say he opened his eyes one last time, gripped Sharon's hand tightly, and whispered something no one in the room will ever forget, his haunting last words. Moments later, he passed, and just like that, the room went silent. The storm that had raged for decades was finally still. While the official cause was reported as complications from long-term neurological illness, insiders say there were multiple factors at play. Years of damage from drug use, untreated infections, and a body that had endured far more than it was ever meant to. Ozzy didn't die like a rock star. He died like a man who had carried the weight of the world for far too long, and the silence he left behind? It's deafening. In the final stretch of his life, Ozzy Osbourne wasn't the larger-than-life Prince of Darkness fans had come to worship. He was quiet, eerily quiet. Those close to him described an unsettling calm, almost as if he had already begun saying goodbye, without ever uttering the words. Gone were the rants, the outbursts, the slurred mischief. Ozzy began isolating himself more than usual, turning down interviews, ignoring calls from old friends, and spending hours sitting in silence. Sharon, his longtime partner, said he would just stare out the window for hours, mumbling fragments of song lyrics or names from the past, people who weren't even alive anymore. Some insiders claim he had started burning old notebooks and throwing away personal items as if he was erasing pieces of his legacy.
Is that me? Good morning. That's Dad.
Dada.
Dad.
Say good morning.
Good morning.
A chilling moment was reported by a close friend who visited him just days before he passed. When asked if he was okay, Ozzy simply replied, "I'm tired of being haunted by things that never left me." He barely ate. He barely spoke. But what he did do was listen endlessly to old records of himself, as if reliving the man he once was. He reportedly played Changes on repeat, a melancholic track about loss and reflection. Nurses who were part of his care team said Ozzy would often wake up screaming in the middle of the night, sweating, terrified. When asked what he was dreaming of, he whispered, "The past. It's still here." In those final days, it wasn't just his body giving out, it was the emotional and psychological weight of a lifetime of trauma, secrets, and battles that had finally taken their toll. Ozzy wasn't just dying. He was unraveling, and the world had no idea. Because Ozzy Osbourne didn't want sympathy, he wanted silence.
He's just, you can't dislike him. He had the best smile in the world, the best smile. He would smile at you and, you know, you'd just like, you'd want to hug him.
Yeah.
And he always remained, he still is a fan of music and other musicians.
Yeah.
He's a huge fan. And I think that people got the sense of him that he's very genuine when he says, I love you.
Yeah.
He does.
Ozzy Osbourne's final words weren't screamed, sung, or shouted. They were whispered. And yet they were louder than any lyrics he ever screamed into a mic. In a moment that shook his family to the core, Ozzy, fading in and out of consciousness, opened his eyes one final time. His frail hand reached out, finding Sharon's, and with barely enough strength to speak, he uttered, I hear them calling. I'm not afraid anymore. The room froze. Those around him later said it felt like time had stopped. For decades, Ozzy had been called the Prince of Darkness, the man who defied death again and again. But in that one chilling sentence, he reveals something far more human, his surrender. He wasn't battling anymore. He wasn't running. He was ready. There was a strange calm in the room after he spoke. Sharon, his children, and a few close friends were there. Some cried, some prayed, but all of them knew they had just witnessed the end of something legendary. Ozzy's journey, from chaos and rebellion to peace and release, had come full circle. And those final words? Fans and loved ones are still unpacking them. Was he talking about voices from the afterlife? His demons? Was it simply the sound of relief? Finally letting go after years of pain? We may never know for sure, but what is certain is that his last message was raw, eerie, and unforgettable. The Prince of Darkness didn't go out in flames. He went out in silence, and his silence said everything. In what would unknowingly become his final public appearance, Ozzy Osbourne didn't look like the Prince of Darkness. He looked tired, fragile, haunted. The swagger that once defined him had slowed to a shuffle. The voice that once screamed to sold-out arenas trembled with something deeper, fatigue maybe, or farewell. During an interview just weeks before his death, Ozzy spoke about legacy, pain, and time slipping through his fingers. He joked in typical Ozzy fashion, but fans noticed something different. His eyes didn't sparkle the same. I've done my share of damage, he said with a weak laugh. I just hope when I go, people remember me as more than the guy who bit a bat's head off. That one line hit hard, because it didn't sound like a joke, it sounded like closure. He also talked about how the pain from his spinal surgeries and long-term illnesses had taken a toll on his spirit. Some days I don't even feel like I'm here anymore, he confessed quietly. It's like, my body stayed, but my soul clocked out. The internet didn't think much of it at the time, but now fans are going back, rewatching that footage, replaying every word, every glance, every pause, and it's clear Ozzy was trying to tell us something. Maybe he knew the end was closer than anyone thought. Maybe he had already made peace with it. In hindsight, that final appearance feels like a man wrapping up a lifetime of chaos. A soft goodbye from someone who never did anything quietly. Long before his haunting final words echoed through the room, Ozzy Osbourne's life was a storm of rebellion, pain, and darkness. Born into poverty in Birmingham, England, Ozzy's childhood was marked by trauma and instability. He struggled in school, battled depression, and turned to petty crime just to feel alive. As a teenager, he was arrested for burglary and spent time in jail, a taste of the chaos that would define his life. But Ozzy didn't just flirt with darkness, he married it. As the wild frontman of Black Sabbath, Ozzy became a symbol of everything dangerous and thrilling about rock and roll. He drank until his body gave out, used drugs until he forgot who he was, and lived as though death was just another backstage guest. There were hospitalizations, overdoses, and moments so violent they shocked even those closest to him. One of the darkest moments in Ozzy's history came in 1989, when he was arrested for attempted murder after trying to strangle his wife, Sharon, while under the influence.
I was downstairs, he was up. Suddenly he comes downstairs a couple of hours later. He just said, we've made a decision. And I'm like, we've? Yes, and you've got to die. And I'm like, okay. He lunged on me and, got me down to the floor and started strangling me.
How close did it get?
Pretty damn close.
The man millions worshipped had become a danger to his own family. He later confessed he had no memory of the incident, and Sharon, though terrified, stood by him as he entered rehab once again. But the darkness didn't end there. For decades, Ozzy battled addiction, rehab stints, and terrifying health scares. The Prince of Darkness was collapsing under the weight of his own myth. Behind the fame was a man haunted by past abuse, inner demons, and the fear that he'd become a monster he couldn't control. Even in sobriety, Ozzy wrestled with guilt and chronic illness, often describing himself as a miracle for surviving everything he had. But those close to him knew the truth. Ozzy's real battle wasn't just with drugs or fame, it was with himself. Despite the chaos, the scandals, and the near-death spirals, Ozzy Osbourne left behind something few artists ever could, a legacy forged in fire. To many, he was the godfather of heavy metal, a man who not only revolutionized music, but gave an entire generation a voice for their rage, their alienation, and their wild need to be seen. His growling vocals, unfiltered performances, and raw honesty made him a legend. But it was his vulnerability, his ability to show both madness and emotion, that made him unforgettable. Ozzy wasn't polished, he wasn't safe, he was real, and in that rawness, millions found comfort. He took the stage bleeding, broken, high, and hollowed out, but he never stopped showing up. His music told the story of a man trying to outrun his demons and sometimes inviting them to dance. And fans followed him through every terrifying twist and turn, because even when he was falling apart, he kept creating, performing, and surviving. Beyond the bat-biting headlines and infamous arrests, Ozzy was a father, a husband, a fighter. He mentored younger artists, championed mental health awareness in his later years, and publicly owned his darkest moments. He proved that legends aren't born perfect. They're born honest, vulnerable, and unafraid to fall. Even in death, Ozzy Osbourne remains larger than life. His legacy isn't just a string of platinum records or sold-out tours. It's the freedom he gave others to be strange, to be broken, to be loud, and to survive it all anyway. Ozzy Osbourne was a living symbol of chaos, rebellion, and the occult. But many believe the persona he embodied wasn't just for show. Some claim Ozzy didn't just flirt with darkness, he invited it in. For decades, conspiracy theories surrounded him. Whispers of occult rituals, demonic possession, and even deals with the devil have plagued Ozzy's name. His music, full of eerie chants and haunting lyrics, only added fuel to the fire. Songs like Mr. Crowley and Suicide Solution were dissected and blamed for encouraging violence and despair. Some fans believe Ozzy's fate was sealed long ago, that his life was cursed from the moment he embraced the dark aesthetic that defined him. Others point to shadowy industry elites, claiming Ozzy knew too much and said too little in his final years. And then there were the drugs, the heavy, toxic kind that doesn't just ruin your body but fractures your soul. Ozzy once admitted to being so high during the peak of his career that entire years of his life were a blur. He lived off a cocktail of alcohol, cocaine, quaaludes, and whatever else he could get his hands on. He overdosed multiple times. He blacked out on stage. And yet,
Ozzy Osbourne in this 1982 interview. You won't believe how many substances were in his system. Watch this.
Hi, Night Flight fans. We're talking with the one and only Ozzy Osbourne. Good evening, Ozzy.
What?
Good evening, Ozzy.
Hello there.
How are you?
Fine.
he survived barely. Until the very end, he battled addiction. Like a ghost, he couldn't exorcise. But fans believe he knew his time was coming. In his final interviews, there was a tone of regret, a hint of something unfinished. Some say he was trying to confess something, but never got the chance. Could Ozzy's death have been more than just age and illness? Could it have been the long, slow consequence of a life drenched in excess and haunted by secrets? Or was it something darker, something he took to the grave? As news of Ozzy Osbourne's death spread, tributes poured in from around the world. Fans gathered outside his former homes, lighting candles and blasting Crazy Train into the night sky. Social media flooded with tearful goodbyes, emotional throwbacks, and heartfelt messages.
And Crazy Train was one of the first songs that I learned, and there was no rock and roll without Black Sabbath, so it's very special for all the rock scene and metal, and doesn't matter what type of rock, but it's timeless and it teaches you how to be yourself and express yourself.
Some calling him the soundtrack of their rebellion, others thanking him for giving misfits a voice. Artists across generations paid tribute too, hailing him as the godfather of metal, a fearless creator who redefined what it meant to be a rock legend. From stadiums to bedrooms, his presence was felt everywhere. And now, his absence hits just as hard. Ozzy Osbourne was more than just a performer. He was a symbol of pain, power, and perseverance. His story wasn't perfect. It was loud, it was messy, it was real. He didn't go quietly, but he left a silence that speaks volumes. A final bow, not with fireworks, but with a whisper, one that fans will hear forever in every riff, every scream, every tear. Rest easy, Ozzy.